We're going to do the music first?
Yeah, I got to click
Okay.
on like 2 or 3 different things here. All right, one more start button.
Welcome to Psyched by MG. This is Mary Grace Randazzo Ratliff, or MG for short. I've been a psychotherapist in private practice for 32 years now. Guess what, everyone? We all have issues. So it's time to lighten up and move forward. Let's stop letting our crap control us and take control of our crap.
Hey, that's a catchy tune.
Hello.
People?
Hi, everybody.
What is going on?
Oh my gosh. Well, we've got David Wright with us and Matthew Burita and Jamie Flanagan.
Hello.
And hello. Of course, I'm MG. How is everyone doing?
We're doing. We're hanging in there.
Well, I have, I wanted to make an announcement real quick because we have Jed Diamond, who's going to be on the podcast March
Fantastic.
8th. So I wanted to let people know that beforehand. Jed is a good friend of mine, and he's written, oh my God, I'm going to guess like 15 to 17 books already.
What an overachiever.
Huh?
What an overachiever.
Oh my God. I mean, he's been in the field 51 years. And he's written such books as Irritable Male, Male Menopause, Mr. Mean, Enlightened Marriage, which my husband and I were quoted in.
I'm feeling attacked. No.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it sounds very like male bashing to me.
And My Distant Dad was another one. He has a website called Men Alive, and he's an expert for sure on men's issues, but his practice and what he's all about is so much broader than that. So he's going to be on the show on May 8th, which is just in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
right?
fantastic.
I think so. I'm really excited to have him come on.
The great thing with what's going on, I got off topic a little bit, not really, but at least, I mean, we can almost get anybody because it's all online right now. So nobody has to travel. Nobody has to do anything really difficult to get here. So
no. I mean, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
And so let's just catch up with everybody and check in with you guys first. How was your week?
Well, for me, I'm happy to be back. So
Yay!
I know it's been a week off. So I'm definitely feeling better. I was actually suspicious that I was sick with everything going on, but I felt better. I got better. And then still have been kind of on the front lines of everything and kind of working, kind of picking up right where I left off. But I think also too, taking my own dose of my own kind of psychic prescription and my own dose of, remedy of just jumping into self-care, whether it's reading, listening to music, or just laying down and finding some type of internal meditative state. So, but other than that, it's just been, keeping my mind and brain busy on positive things. And I'm excited to be back and see you guys, because that's something that I was definitely feeling a loss of. So
yay. Well,
fantastic.
So glad you're back. How are you this week, Jamie?
These cyber connections are the things that, because I'm a very social person. As my wife, she's like, there's like during the, she's like, she'll turn and she'll go, "You're still here? Don't you have someplace to be?" Because we're very cool, and I'll go out with my friends, and it's I'm very social, and I'm missing a lot of that, and doing these it's just an awesome way I just connect with friends and
me too.
So enjoying it. I'm working with kids this week, my seniors. We're trying to figure it out. The governor making new they're very stressed, my high school kids. So we're trying to comfort them as much as possible. And comfort ourselves, and just trying to maintain a balance. I'm lucky. My boy is, in college and done, but you got teachers who have 4 or 5 kids of their own at home. They're trying they're trying to juggle 200 because I have 200 kids.
Holy cow.
I have 200 kids that I have grades for. And you know, some teachers have, you know, somewhere between 170 and 230 you know, our teachers in our school, that's our workload. And so we're trying to manage 200 kids, and then our 5 lunatics running around the house. My lunatics in college, and just like, oh, hey, by the way, my lease is up in 4 days, so I got to move. We thought he was good till April, and we're like, this is why we wanted to see your lease back last August. So his lease is up now, and we got 4 days to get him out of his apartment. So, yeah, so that's my weekend.
Good time.
Oh man,
let's go move the boy. But, so here's the thing. So binging on stuff. I think, are we going to get into more Tiger King today?
Oh, why did you binge on it?
I've watched it, but there's things binging on. There's one. Have you guys seen Freud? It's German.
Yes.
Yeah.
I watched the whole series.
Okay, it's messed. It is messed up.
It's let me preface it. I enjoyed it. It is a really screwed up show, but it's not in any way like autobiographical.
It's not.
It's fiction, but it does give some of his characteristics. Like he started with hypnosis and kind of left that behind because he wasn't working for him. A lot of the cocaine use is probably accurate, I'm assuming, but it's kind of it's kind of like drama horror, I would say.
All right, so if you took like Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr., right? And
that's my God.
So if you took it stylized like that, and that's like action. If you took it to like dark psychology, dark psycho thriller, that's what this is. And my wife Colleen, she's standing here staring at me like, why are you using my name? She finds these amazingly twisted, wonderful shows like Freud and like the Freud, and Berlin Babylon, another just with the subtitles, great stuff. So we've been on those, and so we've been sharing those times together, and it's been fun. We've been connecting like that, which is cool. So yeah, we're good. I've been talking too much.
Well, before you guys jump into that, I just want to give fair warning because I know I made you do Tiger King, which is fairly harmless compared to what Freud would be. It's pretty messed up. So
sexy, druggy,
violent.
Really,
it's hard. It's hard and it's hard.
Yes.
Dark.
Sounds like a good weekend to me.
Oh my God.
Not family friendly, not family fodder.
Oh, it's not.
Oh no, not family friendly at all.
Okay. How are you doing, Dave?
I'm you know what? I've had a lot of I've how do I put this? I mean, I guess no more stressful than usual, but let's back up. I don't know if we talked last week, but the whole for small businesses, the whole payroll protection thing rolled out. And of course, during this week, it went to all these big corporations that had, 5 to 50 million market cap. So like little businesses like ours, of course, didn't get it. And it was just a whole mess. And it was just discouraging because it's like, they put out this 500 billion to help small businesses and people just take advantage of it. And the people who are supposed to get it don't. Now, again, they've kind of changed their tune since then and kind of pulled back a lot of these companies because they realize what idiots they look like. Of course.
Yeah. I saw with the university, there were universities that backed out of the money too.
Stop it.
Yeah. They were told they should be giving it back. So
I know it.
So because I went, my business bank is Chase, and I went through them, and of course never heard anything. They don't communicate because they don't know what's going on half the time. But again, what I've read, apparently a lot of their loans went to big corporations, which kind of ticked me off. And Unbelievable.
It would tick you off
because I applied the first day that it was available. I applied through Chase. So there's as far as first come, first serve, I'm sure I was in the first batch. And again, who knows? A million people could applied the first day, but that was a bit annoying. That was a bit
I bet
frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah, too bad Matt's not on today because
Oh yeah.
Matt Fox, because he would be
Mhm.
jumping on with you right now big time with his
Right.
banking. That's what he does.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's aware of
Yeah.
kind of the backlash that these corporations and the banks are getting, which rightly so, they should, because the whole program was designed to help the little guy, and of
I
course,
know.
as usual, you just get kicked in the nuts when you're down.
I know. I know. Literally. Yeah.
That's pretty much what it was. So
Yeah.
the other thing that really, I don't want to monopolize this whole thing up front, but you notice I got my Vegas thing in the background. You can
Yes, you
see
do.
that. So there's a reason for this, and I'm sure you guys know why. If you heard this, you heard the interview with Anderson Cooper with the mayor of Las Vegas, right?
I heard a tidbit.
Okay, I'm gonna play you a clip from what she
Okay.
said, and then we can go from there.
Go for it.
But hasn't it been because of social distancing that the numbers have been what they are?
How do you know until we have a control group? We offer to be a control group. Anybody who knows anything about statistics knows that, for instance, you have a vaccine.
You're
you
offering
give the real
the
vaccine.
citizens of Las Vegas to be a control group to see if your theory on social distancing.
So you
my
heard all
God.
that, right?
Oh my God.
He asked her, "Do you offer the citizens of Las Vegas to be a control group?" And she goes, "We tried, but we were turned down."
Oh my
Well,
God.
an example of someone who has no regard for the welfare of others. So that was the other thing that really hit me.
Dave, here you guys know because I talked to you a little bit, but this week it just upped reality on this virus for me personally. My son started to get sick Friday. And he looked at me. We were supposed to be doing a chore together, which I was going to pay him to help me paint the laundry room. And he looked at me, he goes, "Mom, I don't feel good." And he said, "I have a really, really bad headache. I haven't had a headache like this before." And so I of course was real worried. I remember my reaction. I didn't want to overreact because I thought, oh, it's allergy season too. And then he was trying to work and he goes, "I really don't feel good. I got to go lay down." I said, "Okay." And so I'm working, distracting myself, not wanting to feed any fear. And that night he had a low-grade fever that hit. And so we're like, okay, we're watching him. And the next day he's like, I don't feel good. Like, I think I have a fever. I had to change clothes several times last night. I had really, really bad chills. Now I'm starting to feel a fear that I can't even explain it. It was just like your head goes to, oh shit, but don't overreact, make sure you keep grounded in your bearings. And then the other side goes, God, is the whole family going to get sick? What is this? I don't want to take him to an urgent care or an ER. Well, his fever kept going up. The chills got really severe. The fatigue, he started to say, my eyes hurt. By Sunday, the fever was at one point 102.4 going up. And that's when I called the pediatrician. And she said, let's watch him. If it gets to 105, take him in immediately.
If it gets to 105?
That was my reaction. I'm like, are you freaking kidding? The whole time when our kids were little, it was like 103, maybe 104.
That if it gets to 105.
Take him in. If it gets to 105.
Wait a minute, lady.
I was, so now we're starting to get terrified. We said we need to get him quarantined, put him in the office, made a bed up for him. And then it's really weird because you're so worried the child is so sick. And then halfway through, I'm like, I don't have a mask on. I'm not wearing gloves. I don't have gloves in the house. Oh my God. I told my husband, we got to stop and figure this out. And you're trying to think clearly when you're scared is very, very hard to do. And so the pediatrician called Monday morning and she said, what's going on? And I told her the symptoms and she said, I want to see him today. I want to see him, I can see him in a couple of hours. They tested for the flu virus, negative. They tested for strep, it was negative. And then she said, my husband said they tested for COVID-19, but the test doesn't come back for a few days. So the fear was, well, of course I didn't sleep because, I'm thinking about my husband, I'm thinking about my daughter, I'm thinking about myself too. And, we're on the front lines. I'm hearing what people are going through, trying to kind of push it out of my head so I don't get too freaked out. And his symptoms, he got tested. The test results came back on, let's see, today's Friday. I think it was yesterday or Wednesday. And his fever remained. It was 6 days of fever. And she said, Mary Grace, it was a negative on COVID. And I went, oh, thank God. And she said, but Mary Grace, we have a lot of false negatives.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I didn't know that. And she said, so he has to stay quarantined. And if one of you gets sick, you have to go get tested immediately. I'm like, are you flipping kidding me? So the test, you can't rely on it to just ease your mind. You can't just go, oh, thank you, God. We're good. This is just some bizarre cold that I have never seen in my life. I've never seen a child shake the way that my child shook. He was out of control, shaking with chills. Of course, the fever spiked so high. But so he has to stay quarantined. And then this is the other thing that makes me think he does have COVID, because apparently you start to get better and then it hits again. And his fever diminished and he started to eat. But today he has diarrhea like you wouldn't believe. Sorry to mention this, but he got another round that hit him. And I'm thinking he's a teenager. Like, do you remember in the beginning of this, they said that the kids aren't getting it, that teenagers and kids aren't getting it and, they're not getting sick? Absolutely not true. He is sick. So I had a lot of fear to deal with this week. And we are, of course, quarantining even more so, telling everyone, look, we got to absolutely make sure that we aren't infected and that we don't get anybody sick. So this is going to take if someone gets sick next week, then we have another 2-week rotation. It's just going to be 2, 4, 6 weeks of trying to figure out if this is it. And if so, we got to make sure everyone gets through it before we could even know that we are safe to be around people. So that was my big scare this week. That was not fun and kind of put COVID-19 right in the middle of my house, which sucks. And so when I hear that mayor, I'm hearing the mayor after this week, like, seriously, I hate to say this, just get the scare. Just get that scare in your house. You'll change.
Yeah, you would think they would, but again, people can rationalize.
I know.
They can rationalize it. They can say,
know.
oh yeah, well it's it's not that whatever. I mean,
yeah,
that's just that just sounds like a woman who's just not in her right mind.
No, I truly, that watching this, go on, just like you said, they're not in their right minds. They're delusional. This is just so crazy. Matthew, Dave, we know when people sit like this in our office and they have in front of them a child who's getting hurt or somebody who's really wounded by their actions and choices and behaviors, we absorb it and go, oh my God, who is sitting in front of me is severely ill mentally. They're delusional. And we asked the question about narcissism. We keep talking about narcissism. We're going to hit the high level today with sociopathy and people who are in the extreme forms of this. But we're watching this get out of control. And we talked about it last week. People like this, we're supposed to give them limits. Limits.
You said you were going to, you mentioned you might talk about cults and cult leaders. Is that something you were going to touch on today? So the world is a cult right now, and the guru is CNN and Fox. Would that be a fair analysis, a fair comparison of people's behavior and abandoning rational thought and behavior and reason, and then just following what is genuinely looks like misinformation, which a clear mind would really see as misinformation or misguided. Is there a parallel between what's going on in the media and I don't want to blame the media, being a journalist myself, some media, and then some politicians? Would you say that the media and some politicians are being like somewhat like cult leaders? Is there a parallel there?
Well, what happens when you see with sociopathy, with severe narcissism, whether it's the charismatic narcissist, you see such severe behaviors, such irrational, impulsive decision-making, and you see a grandiosity and society, when it witnesses that, it needs to maintain what's called the homeostasis, a balance. So the counterbalance, when people are doing something wrong and someone says, oh my God, that's wrong. Nobody should do that. And the person who's doing it starts to rationalize the bad behavior, that person will escalate and go, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Somebody is really hurt in front of you. And so you get these extreme waves attempting to maintain some kind of balance somewhere. It's hard to watch.
But if you're trying to find that balance too, and the person who's trying to rationalize the bad behavior, that often then kind of spurs up the gaslighting.
Yes.
So the person who is actually you mentioned Jamie with the kind of journalism, but like if the journalistic integrity, there's emotional integrity, there's psychic integrity. So when we're talking about the integrity of ourselves and our self-concept and this, our self-identity, it's like when you have that ability and the mental faculty to reason between right and wrong, and someone who is, as you were saying, Mary Grace, is on that, that one side of the continuum that is so severely distorted, you start to actually believe that there's something wrong with you. And that's what happens when and I know some of even the comments and probably people's reactions to our previous podcast were kind of asking questions about like, well, what happens when you're around that and you become enmeshed or entrenched with that? And so that's kind of a forecasting sign to look for when, for the listeners out there, when you're around such severe narcissism and that, entrenched in that, to remind yourself and kind of breathe and kind of take a moment to do that personal inventory of yourself and kind of emotionally reflect. Because, and Mary Grace, you and I and David, we've talked too, and when you can emotionally reason and you have that empathy and it doesn't need to be taught to you, then okay, then you say, whew, thank goodness, I'm okay. I'm not crazy. I'm not paranoid.
Yes. Well, and if you're living in that environment, you have to watch being isolated. Because if somebody who's sociopathic, severe narcissist, they want control over you. And so they're going to make you doubt yourself. You need other people validating. I have this saying, bad behavior is bad behavior. If you're hitting, kicking, neglecting, putting down, trying to dominate and control somebody, bad behavior is bad behavior, and it can never be understood. It can never be rationalized, because if you do that, you are not able to protect yourself from that behavior. People of integrity, people of ethics, their behaviors and their words match. But with people who are more manipulative, their words and their behaviors do not match. If you're in a relationship with somebody, you can't figure it out, you got to watch their behaviors more than their words, because they can't lie with their behaviors, but they can lie with their words.
And if you're bothered by it, for everyone listening, that's a good thing.
Yes.
Breathe,
Yes.
be patient with yourself, seek advice from positive people. But if you actually are feeling something in your and you're experiencing some kind of inner turmoil a little bit, that's actually not a bad thing, because that's your body communicating with you. Like you were saying, Mary Grace, a couple podcasts ago, is that's our internal signs. That's our biology speaking back to us.
Yes, yes, exactly.
And that leads right into what we're kind of looking at that Jamie mentioned, as far as even people who get involved in cults. It doesn't, they don't start out and jump in 100%. They get slowly reeled in, and they just keep being fed this information, disinformation, manipulation, and they find themselves deep in it before they ever even realize it. And then it's difficult to get out, because again, like you said, Matt, you think to yourself, well, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe maybe I'm not thinking right. Maybe this is okay. This is what it's supposed to be.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that goes right into, we are going to talk about cults today and sociopaths, because sociopaths are usually the leaders of the cults. And I did I kept saying Doc on Tiger King is a cult leader. And I came across, I was watching a YouTube, and there was an interview with Rachel Jeffs. And for people who don't know, she is the daughter of Warren Jeffs, who was the founder of the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And he's in prison right now because he raped, minors, women and children in his cult. And she wrote a book, Breaking Free, in 2017. And on YouTube, the Today Show had done an interview with her, and it made me, I thought about Tiger King and my statements about Doc, and, our talks about narcissism. And so the three of us have watched this video, and, here's this Warren Jeffs who he was so rigid and so controlling with the people who followed him. And that's what someone does, who becomes a cult leader. They isolate their followers. They find the most vulnerable population that doesn't have a home, that doubts themselves. If a person has self-esteem and value at all, he will not go after them. It is always a vulnerable person. And then they will control their world and isolate them from the outside world. And Rachel Jeffs, his daughter, spoke about how her father did this, and how you were not allowed to watch television. You were not allowed to listen to music. Education was controlled, and it was very much, based on the FDL's belief system. And he controlled everything that they did. And I had said last time, boy, with sociopaths and narcissists, if you feed their grandiosity and if you don't set limits, they get more and more delusional. And in watching that video, he got so controlling of his followers that he was telling them, I don't know if you guys caught this, how to put their clothes on in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Put your left hand in and then your right. And he got so psychotic that she described he had punished her and her husband because he felt that she had, I can't remember what she did, that she did something wrong that she didn't do, whether it wasn't listening to her husband or something, that he isolated her from the rest of the group. And he tended to do this. If he felt you did something wrong, he was right. And he would then punish and unfortunately scare everybody into submission. And he got, of course, more and more severe in his delusional ways. It was, I was just shocked.
And it's kind of and I don't say this to be like, to be funny, like in a funny way, but no cult ever ends well.
No,
it always ends with somebody going over the edge or some big tragedy. Or, I mean, you look at Jim Jones, you look at David Koresh. I mean, you could list hundreds of them.
Yes.
It starts somewhere and in the end is never good.
No. Every dictator falls too.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I mean, and if you doubt them, if you question them, I always say they're people that function in chaos. They will distract your point and your clarity and throw, the conversation into another direction. And it gets to the point where the person who's trying to make a point, who's trying to be clear, who's trying to confront a bad behavior, gets so worn out and confused. And that sociopath or that cult leader uses that manipulation with people to make sure they don't get caught with whatever they're doing wrong. And in this situation, it was severe sexual abuse of little children, his own children. It was so bad. And when you saw them, they showed a video, a clip of, the authorities going in and taking the children away because there were so many cases of this sexual abuse. These people were so brainwashed and so submissive that they were crying, and they continued to follow him even when he was in prison. And people say, how could that be? Well, when you're battered that much and you're controlled that severely, you're terrified to think independently in any way, let alone argue, because Rachel shared that if you could not, what did he used to say? You have to be sweet. He told the girls, you always must be sweet.
Well, and you can even see it. And I'm not saying this in a critical way, but she's, she does this interview, she's speaking up, but just even just the way she presents herself, she's very quiet and very drawn and kind of, and I don't like again, not critically, but kind of mousy and just
always looking down. Still,
body language is just closed.
Yeah, it is still in process. I talked about it isn't until a survivor of abuse gets to anger that you see the powerful force in them. If they don't get through that emotion, you keep that meek. For her, though, it's a hell of a mountain to climb.
Yes.
Because she was so ingrained and inundated with, if you even have a thought that is not sweet, God is going to condemn you severely. And her father was the prophet of Jesus Christ in his own bizarre head. And, and then you notice that they have all these children, that's his mission. He's got to create his army. And it's all about him in order to be king. We always use the word, you guys, grandiosity with the narcissist. They have this very inflated ego that they present. And
no, do not listen to that man.
That's right. But somebody has to step up and not follow. They have to not listen. But that's hard when you're trained, especially from the issue is, again, as a young child, from birth, you're trained this way.
Yeah, you are.
It is
Yeah, you come from those
And
homes.
it is very, and I don't want to discourage people, but it's very difficult to break that cycle when it's all that you've known. It's all that you've known from birth.
Yeah, you have to have an outside intervention. And, you know, in this interview, it was for the Today Show, the interviewer said it's a miracle that she got out. It took such bravery and inner sense. And when he sexually abused her, she began to get angry. And then when her mom did, you know, her mom died of breast cancer. He didn't allow them to see doctors. And you know, by the time her mother got to see a doctor, it was too late. I mean, this is murderous behavior. I mean, this is, you know, neglect to the point of manslaughter, as far as I'm concerned. It's just horrible what happened. And that neglect of her mother, I mean, you know, I can't remember, did she leave just before then? Was she out by the time her mother died? I can't remember. Can you remember, Matthew?
I don't. I thought it was.
Did
I
she,
don't know.
or was that the like thing that pushed her out the door?
I think that might have been close to that.
Okay. I couldn't remember, but you know, and then I think about, you know, go back to the Tiger King and Doc with all the women. And these guys, everything is sexualized again.
Oh, well, I was going to come back to that point because it's almost, again, it's just characteristic of most cult leaders. It always ends up being sexual, whether with kids or women or men, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They always have that sexual control, and that's always a part of this.
The predator in them.
Mm-hmm.
There's a predator in them. You know, again, we're talking about sociopaths, and they do not bond with people. They don't. People are there to serve them. People are objects. People are not allowed to have feelings, wants, needs, limits, or no's. If they do, they will be punished. And again, we're talking about sociopaths, a more severe form of narcissism, and they will be punished and manipulated into submission. If, you know, we're talking about cults. So the follower constantly feels as if they're not being loving enough, they're not being good enough, that they're bad people because they're not doing enough for another person. And they learn that if I don't give to you and sacrifice myself, then I'm a really bad person and I'm not loving. And I deserve them to be punished and condemned. That's pretty heavy stuff. And sociopaths are very, very bright. You know, they're high in the IQ range. They know how to manipulate, and they know vulnerable people. They can read people really well. It's, you know, part of their unfortunate way they use their gift, I think.
Well, and if I remember right, in this specific story, I think most of these people were again uneducated, and not that uneducated is not like they didn't have much schooling. They didn't have any socialization or academics even, and not that that's everything, but if you're just at a lower understanding of how things work.
Yes.
I think
they were only allowed to go to the 8th grade, and then up to the 8th grade was controlled what they were exposed to. It had to be his school in which he was the principal.
I think it's important to also like take a look at, like you were saying, Mary Grace and David too, is like when we're in our offices, right, and in these what are supposed to be these safe holding spaces, right, and I often remind my patients of that, or just obviously even outside that, when we're around friends and family, and especially even right now in our current climate, is like reminding people that we're safe, and then paying attention to the body language, like you were kind of citing off of some of the characteristics of a sociopath, Mary Grace. It's like, I think what needs to be recognized and observed is the sometimes unobservable, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
and it doesn't just, and it always have to come from a therapist, but it's definitely a good healthy network. However, you know, people at home and who might be feeling or be under some type of rule or being beat into submission, pay attention to the unobservable sometimes, and those nuanced kind of body language too, like you were saying, even in the interview, kind of like very meek, very, David, you were saying like kind of very mousy, like, you know, kind of just very kind of inward. And, you know, of course, when we talk about therapy, we talk about increasing our sense of self and positivity and positive affirmations, right? We want our kind of chest to kind of open up and our broaden our shoulders and just our whole light and life of us to open up. And so I think that's also important, because even when I worked in residential or even in the prison system, it's like, I'll say to people, like, you know, they'll have their head down like this, and I'll stop and I'll say, excuse me, lift your head for me, please. Let me look at you. Can you do me a favor and sit up for me? And it's interesting, I use that terminology and language. This is where language is important too. When I'm asked, I say, can you do me a favor? Right? So it's like, I'm asking permission. I'm not beating into submission. And I think that's important, an important healing component when, you know, if you find yourself, and I think so many of us are entrenched or on the periphery, like kind of around kind of sociopathy, maybe not a sociopath proper, but if you think about it, like 1 in 25 individuals are sociopaths, 1 in, you know, 100 are psychopaths. And there's a really good book, and we can, a book that I read, it was The Sociopath Next Door by Dr. Martha Stout. And, you know, for readers and listeners out there who are looking for some insight, but just some very user-friendly, I use, because I need user-friendly, but like that user-friendly approach of understanding, like you were saying, Mary Grace, on that continuum. And it really paints that picture, and it allows you to see the canvas of your life. You get to project your life while you're reading that, but I think also too, everything, and it kind of encompasses everything that you've been talking about. And there's just so much healing. I think that's also something that, you know, and I think I can speak for all of us, is that that's a component that we want to stress, is that there is healing comes.
There is.
Yes.
You know, we've got the symptoms of the sociopath, and I, you know, I'm going to take a second and just read some of them. You know, as I said, they're severe narcissists. They're controlling and dominating. They have no remorse when they hurt somebody. They will rationalize away and explain away that they have just hurt somebody. They do not take ownership of any kind of mistake or harm that they do with people. And they are masterful when they hurt someone to flip it around and make it your fault. They're highly intelligent usually. They have no empathy. They view people as objects or possessions. They don't bond. They don't abide by the same rules. They, you know, just like with Warren Jeffs, he had all of these rules for his followers and he didn't follow any of them. He would tell, you know, the child who's being sexually abused, don't let anybody else do this to you, or don't do this to anybody else. This isn't okay, but I get to. Again, that grandiosity. They're manipulative, they're dishonest, they're deceitful, they're violent, aggressive, irresponsible, impulsive, risky. They do risky behaviors and then they eventually get caught, hopefully. And they're delusional. Again, this grandiosity that they have is a delusion. It is not reality. And I think, you know, they're so good at presenting these delusions through manipulative measures, and they present them to people who are the vulnerable population, who come from tough homes, who don't trust themselves, who have been abused growing up, or they, you know, make their partners have babies that they can control even more. so the victims or the people who live in these kind of relationships, they doubt themselves, they live in fear, they may not know that they're afraid because they do what we call dissociate. I think we touched, Dave, I can't remember if we talked about dissociation last week.
We did, yes.
And so dissociation means they just live in their heads, like they're not connected to their emotions and their body. So they don't get the cueing in their body that tells them this is dangerous, you're getting hurt, run. They don't have it because they've cut themselves off from their emotions. That's right, we did, because we talked about Steph, who I kept calling a woman.
Right. That's okay. We got the point
I saw the darn I saw the podcast and I'm like, holy crap. So these poor victims on the victim side, the key thing is they have to get out. They have to get out, and they have to get their brains exposed to help, to support. Years ago, I think they still call it, when they get somebody out of a cult and they take them out, forcibly, families used to do this. They go through desensitization, and that's where family members and therapists
they call it deprogramming. I mean,
deprogramming now. Yeah.
But the verbiage is updated, but it's the same thing. It's resetting all these things that have been
yes. Just all those tapes that sociopath programmed in their head, they have to go in and redo. And so this poor person is going to take as much bravery and courage that they can to get out. And that's, the last time I talked about Seth and some of the people on Tiger King, where I said, when you look at somebody who's got dissociation, who's been through abuse, they do have, in some ways, a super sanity to be able to live in that environment and survive. That by disconnecting and dissociating and not feeling, they can get through that war zone that they're living in. And it is a war zone because nobody thrives in those environments. So there's a super sanity there.
Well, and the difficulty is, yes, that and they need that to get through that. That's how they get through it.
Yes.
The problem is most people don't, once they're out of it, they stay there instead of.
That's where the therapy,
yes,
gotta get, we talked about this last time, Dave, they've got to get to the trauma specialist who can help them with PTSD and dissociation to be able to differentiate living in the war zone and constantly the ways they can recreate it. And that therapist will teach you how to live in peacetime and to be able to choose your responses to things, to conflict, to what you perceive as an argument, to be able to choose your responses to it so that you're just not habitually recreating the same environment in a different relationship. And you've got to see a therapist for that. You got to see a trauma specialist.
Well, because there's a process of discarding and really almost devaluing the negativity. And that's where, a kind of a fancier clinical term is just that cognitive dissonance, where it's like you're almost in turmoil with yourself because of things you were inundated and raised with as a child, right from birth until however old, that you get to that point of then you start separating. And recognizing the recognition and the insight is good, but that's where we get this inner turmoil because we're being pulled back and forth because, well, wait a minute, if I'm now 18 and I have this insight and I'm with a healer, as you're saying, right, and going through working with a trauma specialist or, a therapist, but wait a minute, 17 years and 11 months and 29, 30 days, I've been living under this rule. I've been living under this guise. So it's a tough process of discarding and devaluing. And it's interesting. The irony is that that's what a narcissist does to the person.
Yes.
That they're really discarding and devaluing the victim, and you're almost flipping it back on them to gain your own baseline or homeostasis, as you said from the beginning, to get to that level where you're not living, breathing, eating, sleeping in turmoil, in duress.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And, you know, you made me think of just people who live in battering relationships. And, you know, what they go through, there's a similar, it's a lesser scale of, you know, brainwashing and devaluing you and making you doubt yourself and making you feel like things are your fault. I mean, a batterer may not have 6 wives. Sometimes they cheat though. But they have different rules that they live their life by versus the ones that they want you to follow. And for anybody, women, men are in battering relationships, you know, intellectually dominating relationships. You know, there's physical abuse, there's emotional abuse, and there's intellectual abuse. And when that happens, where you're feeling guilty for everything, that's a big, huge red flag right there. You're constantly feeling guilty. You're constantly feeling like it's your fault. That needs an intervention. And that can be a phone call to a battered hotline number. That can be a phone call to a therapist. That can be a note, you know, that you write to someone saying, I need help and I'm not sure how to get it. To do something that there is an intervention in your world so that somebody can help you get out, because you can't do it alone. It's really, really hard to do that.
And it's very difficult to make that step, because typically the person in the battered situation is, they live in fear. They're fearful of retribution. They're fearful of the punishment, of the consequences. So it is difficult. But I don't want to say it's not possible, because people have done it and they do it every day.
Well,
Yes.
and
Can do it.
Difficult, like you're saying, David, difficult doesn't mean impossible. And I think
Exactly.
Mary Grace too, you know, you don't do it alone. And I think I can speak for all of us, but we can take a roll call. But you don't do it alone until you can live your life on your own.
That's right.
And I think that, you know, like you'll find that independence, but you have the social network, you have that support, so that you regain, a term that I use is like, you regain that emotional consciousness, you know, about yourself.
And I will almost guarantee that anybody who's been in that battered role, that there are people around you who would be happy to help you out of that, because they probably told you 100 times, what are you doing with this guy or woman?
Yes. And oh my gosh, let me help you. You have to let somebody in. You cannot let your insecurity paralyze you to the point of no movement. You have to let somebody help you.
And that means being vulnerable, because you're, in a way, you're admitting that you've put up with this for so long. And it's a difficult thing to acknowledge and to say, you have to take ownership of that and say, listen, I'm not flawed because I haven't done this yet, but you can't stay there. You have to make that change.
Well, and even to make to kind of put this into like a real picture too, so people kind of know when kind of forecasting what it'll look like too, I think is like when you're looking at it, is like the gift isn't actually doing the therapy and like doing everything that you know, connect. The gift comes after that, when you're able to not live in fear, and when you're able to be, you know, independent. And I think that's part of it, is, you know, the litmus test or the self check-in takes place. And when you get to that point of thinking, I'm running or hiding, I'm living in the shadows, I'm living in the darkness, that's a sign. That's a sign for anybody listening that, you know, check in with yourself and check in with someone else. someone else who's your support system, preferably if it's obviously very stressful and you're under duress, preferably a therapist, someone, a specialist who can help you.
Yes. I want to give the National Domestic Violence Hotline number today. It's 1-800-799-SAFE, which the numbers for that is 7233. So it's 1-800-799-7233. TTY for those who are deaf, it's 1-800-787-3224. But again, that's for people who have TTYs.
And we'll make sure those numbers get posted on the
Yes.
on the information.
I have to get better at that.
Yeah, well, we'll make sure it's up there because when they watch, they'll be able to reference it. So
Yes,
that's
good. Yes, excellent. So a heavy topic today.
Well, they're not always fun. I mean,
Yes.
but that's what we're here for. We're here to help people, and there are some people in some very, very tragic situations. And
I
can change it.
Yes, and I think I'm seeing, so much delusion right now that it feels like almost a sense of urgency to like really teach people about narcissism, about borderlines, about sociopaths, about psychopaths. Everyone really needs to learn what that is and how to recognize that kind of person.
And learn how to stay connected.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest remedies, obviously. I mean, there's so much more, but when you connect and you create a social, Mary Grace, we talk about this, David, we do too. When you have a social bond, it gives chills up my spine. I could bring myself to tears because when you have a social bond, you reject any and all atmospheres of narcissism. And it's strong sometimes. So you have to keep on having positive social bonds, safe social bonds, spiritual social bonds to have those connections.
Yeah. And a quick thing for people who are friends of people who tend to be with narcissists or batterers or somebody who's sociopath, high intelligence, highly manipulative, for friends to keep checking their reality, keep saying it's not okay to be treated that way. It's not okay for someone to hit you. I care about you so much that to watch you get hit and hurts me. They're used to the narcissism. They're not used to the other reality, which is somebody who has compassion and care and can connect with them. And they need those reality checks. They really do.
Yeah. And again, reach out and speak with someone. I mean, again, we're all therapists. There are therapists everywhere. And actually, this is a good time because, and you guys probably know this, most of the major insurance companies right now are waiving copays and deductibles for telehealth sessions. So, finances are an issue and you have insurance, that shouldn't be an issue.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that, David. Thanks for letting everybody know that. That is such an important thing right now. Yeah, thank you so much for that.
Because people who have a deductible, they can't afford $120 to come to a session every week. But and this will, and as things go on, I'm sure this will be in place for a while. So it is a good time. And again, I know it's difficult not seeing us physically, but we're doing this right now.
Yes.
Part. So we offer telehealth sessions. We can talk.
Yes, we do.
Can see you. Usually it's video and audio.
Yes.
Ideally. So we can still connect with you and we can still do great work, even though we're not face to face in person.
Yes. You can message us on our Facebook page, Psyched by MG. You can look on our websites. Dave, plug your website real quick.
Yep. I'll do, it's Motor City Hypnotist, but through there you can get to my clinical site.
Yeah.
So just do the Motor City Hypnotist Facebook website, and you can get me there.
My my website, Psyched by MG, same name. Again, message me on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn. Get a hold of us in any way, you know, you can. And of course, we'll be glad to help.
And for you listeners out there. Oh, go ahead, Jamie.
No, the podcast is readily available now on Apple Music. So people
Fantastic.
can so make a point, subscribe, leave a comment. That helps make Mary Grace and the team more popular.
And leave a comment also if you have something that you want us to talk about.
Oh,
yes. That you want us to address, please let us know, because we'll
hit it.
We may do it and we may say, "Oh, good for you."
A couple people were there was a chat room, the video was up, and a couple people you don't like to make the videos dated because you never know when someone's going to get Apple Music and find your podcast and listen, so you never know. But today is Mary Grace's birthday, and so a bunch of people in the video, I gotta throw it out there. Alexandra, Kendra, is it Dever?
Dever, she's on. Shout out to all of them.
And Kathy. They all said, Kathy said happy birthday as well. They're all chimed in the video. So happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Kathy.
You know what they are?
You cool cats and kittens.
Yeah.
and Kendra will know that. She'll get a kick out of that.
That's right. Yep. Yes. So it's been quite a week. We've covered a lot. We've told everybody where they can find us. We're needing to come to a close. We also want to plug, Podcast Detroit.
Absolutely.
Forget to plug that. That's our home. And then other than that, thanks for listening in. And like Dave said, please, if you have something you want us to cover or talk about, please write us and tell us, because we will look at it and take it very, very seriously. Other than that, I think that's it.
All right,
Thanks
folks.
for joining us.
We will see you next week. Same time, that channel.
Yep, same place.
Bye, everyone.
Hey, that's a catchy tune.